So we're talking today about a very auspicious day, a day which is also intense, a day which is very historic, and it's sad for some people, and it's very enigmatic for most people. And the day today on the calendar, Gimmel Tammuz, the third day of the month of Tammuz, is the day that most people know it's famous because this is the day that the Lubavitcher Rebbe passed from physically from this world 29 years ago. It was literally in the front pages of all of the newspapers of the time. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was and still is known as one of the most influential figures. There's an education day that presidents have been awarding the birthday of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. His shluchim, his emissaries, are literally in every part of the world assisting, all Jews that need assistance and non-Jews, assisting basically humanity in an unprecedented way. And now it's a revolution which the Rebbe made, which the Rebbe did, taking over from the helm of his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, and he took on and expanded the operations to an unprecedented level. So today's the day that basically most of his followers never thought would would ever happen, because he was 94 and him and his wife were childless. And basically that left no successor to this dynasty. And for half of the followers, adherents of the Chabad movement, they believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach, was Mashiach, right? There was basically, when that day of the passing, there were people who were dancing in the streets because they thought that's it. It's the end of times, and there's going to be like something's going to happen, right? Other people were crying, and half of the people are. But whatever the story is, in whatever way that we try to understand the Rebbe, and there's biographies, have been really incredible biographies written about his life, and it's very, very kedai, very worthwhile to pick up one or two of the biographies. There's one by Telushkin, one by Chaim Miller, and there's, I think, one by Steinsaltz. It's very worthwhile to delve into this leader, the biography of this leader, how he grew up, what the times, the circumstances of his life were, what he was influenced by, why he was so passionate about Judaism, in this way, and so this day marks the day that, again, most people, at least like in that following, never thought would be. So it's an enigmatic day, a very intense day. But if we go back a little bit further to that actual day, and we go back even 50 years prior to that, it was a day that the Rebbe's father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, was given the news that he would be released from prison. And this prison that he was in was the most intense prison call, that essentially he was incarcerated with, and everyone knew this, that if you're going into this type of a jail, that's it. You're not coming out with two feet, and it was a torture chamber, pretty much. And the Rebbe would speak about, the torture. He would hear people that were screaming, and then there were sounds that just like stopped. It was a horrifying place, like that the Frierdiker Rebbe describes, and for him to be in it is a whole holiday in and of itself, which was later on called the 12th day of Tammuz, him coming out of this situation. But the beginning, the seeds of coming out of this jail term, which signified not just coming out of the jail term of specifically of one person, an individual going into jail, but it represented the Jewish people, and it represented a tremendously collective and auspicious foreboding, the fact that he was taken out of this situation, the worst, right, of communist Russia. He battled communism, right? And so he was told that he was going to be released on this day, on the third day of Tammuz. That's when he got the memo. And this is after, people like presidents were petitioning for him, right? A president of the United States, like everyone on the highest level was working to get the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, out of communist Russia. And it's not easy to work with those Russians, and nothing has changed, right? And so whatever it is you say that they worked on the behalf, it was really a miraculous thing because the Russians don't care about anyone. Right? And so the fact that he was released was a complete miracle. And he was told that he is going to be released on the third day of Tammuz. That's today. So this day already has an auspicious beginning, but it doesn't stop there. There's an auspicious beginning even prior to that. And it's brought down in history, in Jewish history, that on the third day of Tammuz, Joshua, upon entering the land of Israel, Joshua had to battle the seven nations. They were called the seven nations, which were inhabiting the land. The Canaanites, it was called the land of Canaan, and they were comprised of seven nationalities within the land of Israel. And they went in, and one after one, they conquered them. But it didn't start off easily. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about Jericho, how Jericho was the first stop of Joshua. It was Joshua going in, and once he was able to neutralize and get into Jericho, which is a whole like that was like we discussed like what Jericho means on a spiritual level, then they were able to now enter the land. But then here comes this day that they were fighting one of the most intense battles. The Givonim were battling, and there was they were feeling the attrition. They were feeling like, they were having a very difficult time in fighting. But then they did the job, and through the leadership of Joshua, they were inspired to go on. And what they did was miraculous. They completely decimated the Givonim. But what happened? It was getting dark. The time was getting late. So there's no night warfare back then. There's no infrared, like you're not seeing the enemy, right? Until like 30 years ago, that never exists. That didn't exist. So if it's nighttime, it's like, that's it. War, like the battle's over, right? But here they are, they're about to like clinch the thing, and they're so close, and nature hits them. So Joshua famously says, Shemesh begivon dom. The sun in Givon dom means stop. Sun stand still. And in that miraculous event that basically never occurred afterwards, until the Talmud says the story of what was his name? Nechunya. Name is going to come back to me. In the Talmud says about a similar individual that was a very righteous individual that gave water to Nechunya Chofer Shichin. Thank you. Nachon, yeah. So Nechunya Chofer Shichin, that he was this very righteous individual that gave water to those that come up to Israel. She wrote a thesis on this, like, right? Is it a doctoral work or master? Yeah, that's cool. She's got a master's in Judaic studies, in Talmudic studies. Yeah, very cool. So yeah, thank you for that name. So basically, we don't have to go into the story necessarily of what happened to him, but it's an interesting anecdote that the sun stood for Joshua, but it also stood years later in this Talmudic anecdote of Nechunya Chofer Shitin. But we have Joshua performing a Nakdimon Ben Gurion. No, but also he was the Roman. It's Nakdimon Ben Gurion. Nakdimon זה החמה. נקדימון בן גוריון. כן. That's it. Okay. Let's so good. No. Thank you. I appreciate it. So the sun stands still for Joshua. And at that point, these Jewish warriors go out to, they go all out, and they basically kick, but they go after them and decimate the Givonim. And with this miracle, they spearheaded the success and the rest of the victories that happened in the land of Israel. So we're told what happened in this battle. What was the deeper aspect of this battle? So we're told in the in some of the books that what happened, that Joshua came along because these warriors were getting tired, and Joshua is like, guys, like, we could do this. And he started to say a special prayer. What was the special prayer that Joshua said? He said the prayer of Aleinu Leshabeach, right? Aleinu Leshabeach La'adon Hakol Latet Gdula Le'yotzer Bereshit. Let us praise Aleinu Leshabeach La'adon Hakol, to the master of all, to give grandeur to the one that created Bereshit, all of Genesis, right? Shem Mishtachavim Lehevel. They bow down to Hevel and Tarik. They bow down to Hevel, and that refers to idolatry. They bow down to the sun. They bow down to the sun. Lehevel velarik. That the idolatry is all about the strength of the sun, of the physical world, of nature, versus the unity that's found within all, which is there from the one and only creator. Hu Elokeinu, what do we say? Ein od. Emet Malkeinu efes zulato. Ein od, there's nothing but Hashem. That idea, that is not an idea, that's a truth of Ein od milvado, that nothing exists besides for Hashem. That when there's a saying that, two things. What Rabbi Chaim Vital, the student of the Arizal, says, that when we pause during that place in Aleinu, one should stop and just meditate a little bit after Ein Od, for the things that they really want in their life. And you realize that it all comes from the Ein Od, and that's a very opportune time to receive those things. So to pause by Hu Elokeinu Ein Od, right? And to stop at that moment and you realize it's nothing but you, Hashem. And that place of unity is where all good things really come from. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, who was the student of the Gra, says that when a person finds themselves, God forbid, in a serious predicament, they should, when they say Ein Od Milvado, not just say it, I believe that Ein Od Milvado, there's nothing else besides you, Hashem, that has the power to extract them from the situation that they are in. That I know, Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin says in the book Nefesh HaChaim, says that a person should, if they are, God forbid, in a situation, and they either say it, and even more importantly, they believe it, they know it, Ein Od Milvado, it's a perspective shift, right? What happens during the Aleinu The Aleinu is basically the highest prayer that we have in the entire Siddur. Yes. So we think it's like the last, right? We think it's, and it is technically the last, and it's not part of the rest of the prayer service, right? But the Aleinu is such a powerful prayer that it culminates it all. Or just tilt their speaker that way. They could enjoy it. I don't want to stop a good thing. So funny.
That's really
Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
because even without ever knowing that, every time I've been in a situation where I feel great, that's exactly what I've done.
Wow.
It's like that's the only thing you can do.
Right.
It's the only
You
real
feel
thing.
you feel like there's a unity here. There's a
Yeah.
oneness that
Like,
I'm bringing
I
upon
can't
myself.
think about the things that led to this moment. I can't necessarily think about the outcome because
Mhm.
who knows what's going to happen. So the reality is just like God, like you take the wheel now.
You're
It's
in
like,
this.
you know,
You're the boss.
Yeah, do what you will.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but this it's a really important feeling.
Exactly. It's and that is the essence of the Aleinu that we're thanking Hashem. But as we're going into our day, so to speak, because we've ended, the davening, the prayer, but now we're going into situations in our day which will be trialing.
Yeah.
Like every single day has its trials and tribulations that you can't delude yourself and no, everything's gonna be a Club Med kind of a day.
Well, if there are no challenges, you're probably not setting your bar very high.
Exactly. Or you've given up, right? Exactly. Yeah, and not willing to face the challenges, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So that is the warriors. Those are the warriors of Joshua. Those warriors of Joshua were like, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of intensity going on in this land of Israel, basically. And now for us to battle this land, to battle the inhabitants of this land is a very difficult thing. But we have to remember that where do they come from? And this is basically going into like the whole story of the spies, that the spies didn't want to come into the land because they felt that we want to be in spirituality. And that's why they really didn't want to go into the land. And that's where they made the grave mistake, because they really are supposed to be in the land. And the land is basically what the challenge is. And to see godliness within the challenges, within the obstacles. They were like, no, we want to be up here.
It's easier that way.
It's easier, exactly. They want to stay where? In the midbar. What's the midbar? Midbar is the desert. Because the desert, I was just speaking to a friend of mine today who's moving to the desert. There's something very special about the desert, which I personally love, resonate with. It's tremendous, going to like in Israel, the Arava on the way to Eilat, where you just, the vastness of it, the ground, it's very spiritual. You would think the opposite, technically, but it's a very vast place that the Torah was given where? In the desert.
What do you want to say? That something you have nothing, it's empty. You say
Right.
Why? Yeah.
Why? Because the desert is us. Because when we're vacant of ego, then we're like the desert, right? Because that's the desert. The desert is egoless space. It is. For you to spiritually connect to the desert means that there's the ego that has been surpassed.
But the desert's also not very nourishing.
Right. That's all part of the ego. Yeah. Because so you're not getting your your Amazon Prime exactly, in the moment. You're not getting, the perfect bathroom. You're not getting the perfect hotel. There are hotels in the desert. I mean, but anyways, when they were right, exactly. They had the egolessness, they had the spirituality and the amenities. Like they had like food from heaven, water, like direct TV, like to all spiritual, like it was technologically on the highest level. Like God willing, we'll get there, on where they were at, pre-technology, but this is like spiritual technology that they were really operating within.
Yeah.
And then they were told, you know what? We've got a place for you. You're going to leave this oasis of godliness, of like the place to really spiritually grow. This is the place to spiritually, when you have like the perfect teachers, you've got the perfect environment, you've got the perfect like food, like why stop a good thing? And God is like, no, you go to Israel, you go to challenges, you go to obstacles, you go to battles, and that's where you'll find me. That was a very big pill, like a very sobering pill for them to swallow, and that's why they didn't want to go spiritually. They did not want to enter the land because of that. So here they are after 40 years with Joshua, knowing that it's do or die. There's only one way, and this is the only way. Like we've been taken out of the cloud and we're basically here facing this land, but basically facing ourselves to contend with, do we believe that we have the ability to also be within this land?
It's almost like the spiritual period, like the desert, it was like a preparation phase for the real physical work that had to be accomplished.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can't live in it's not always what's
exactly.
It's just like the training. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
Because our souls descended from up high, from heaven. It says a portion of God from heaven. And the soul, before coming down into this world, is like, what? You're sending me like what? So it says mashbin oto, they make the soul swear, but the Tzemach Tzedek says mashbin oto tzadik, make the soul swear that they, from the word seven, masbin oto, they satiate the soul with the powers that, you know what, you have the power to do this. It's almost like this prep coach. Yeah. That the team is about to go out on the field, so they already know, they've been training, they know what they should be doing, they're on a certain level. But when the coach is like he's like giving them the whole thing, the whole 5-minute thing, then everyone is just like riled up. They know they have the energy. They're like, okay, fine, as much as I prepared for it, like mashbi noto. So that's basically the crossing that Jordan River was basically this juncture into, this is going to separate the boys from the men, right? The women from the girls. It's like, are you guys able to do this? And in this battle, there was this doubt that was going on by the people, by the warriors. They saw the sun and they saw their capacities and they doubted themselves. And they needed that pep talk from their coach, from Joshua. Joshua was there. And what did he say? He said, Aleinu l'shabech, forwards and backwards. It says, if anyone needs like a certain Yeshua, a certain salvation, you say Aleinu l'shabech, forward and backwards. I've heard this from a Kabbalist that, when there's a need for certain like big things to happen, so a group of Kabbalists come together and they basically say certain things, but one of the things that they do say is the Aleinu L'Shaber, forwards and backwards together, with the intention of breaking, of doing things, the words, right? So this, for example, happened in the Gulf War, and of course it's Hashem, but I'm saying, like, the intentions of saying these words is massive, is very important. So, but what is within the words? So midbar comes from the word desert, but midbar also comes from the word medaber, to speak. Joshua was teaching the people, hey, you have the ability to speak to God. You have the ability to be God-like, because how did God create the world? Speech. You have the ability to bring about reality through speech. We have the ability to transform what is possible into something which is like the impossible possible. That's the story of the Jewish people. That's the story of really of who we are, where things seem impossible, but through the power of medaber, of prayer, of speech, Joshua was reminding them, you know what? It seems like you're below the sun, but like King Solomon says, there's nothing new underneath the sun. Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. And the Talmud says, underneath the sun, there isn't something which is new. But above the sun, there is new. What's above the sun? Above the sun is the Torah. The power of the speech of Torah, that we're able to enunciate and say these words of Torah that are basically the reason for our existence, because it doesn't make sense that we exist, in Jewish history. Like, it just doesn't make sense. There have been mighty nations before us that don't exist anymore. They're just, have you heard of the Phoenicians? Where are the Phoenicians now? Where are the Assyrians, the great kingdom of Assyria, right? Where are the Persians? Like, where are the Babylonians? Well, they were the nationality. They don't exist. The Greeks, with all their great wisdom, Greece right now is like almost like a third world country, and basically in their economy. Italy, like the Romans, like the Romans, exactly. The Romans. Yeah, the Romans don't exist anymore. The Byzantines don't exist anymore. And yet the Jewish people, small Jewish people, amount of Jewish people we exist. But not only that, we're in the focal point, we're in the center of it all throughout history. That famous Mark Twain quote, like, the Jew, I forgot the exact quote. It's search it on Google, but it says that basically he's like, I don't understand what's the secret of the Jew, but he's been there since the beginning, and he will be there throughout all of ages. And we know this secret is within the power of our speech, to communicate, to speak to Hashem, to speak to God, and to realize that God, Hashem, is in our lives. And that although we seem like we are in nature, right, or governed by nature, by the stars, by the sun, by looking like the rest of humanity, and looking and being governed just like everyone else, truth is we're above the sun. That the truth is that we are above nature, and that's what Yoshua was showing the people as they were conquering the land, as they were going in. No, you're going into the land, but it's not like you're just going to be going into the land and be like a wood chopper and be like a farmer and like that's it. No, bring God into being a wood chopper, bring God into the mundane, into the physicality, bring the spirituality within the physicality. It's not a contradiction. Not only that, but that's the whole purpose of creation. The whole purpose of creation is that merging of God, of bringing godliness within the world, within the materialism, and basically to speak to God within my situation. Ein od milvado, to realize nothing else besides for him in my situation. If it's I'm on a bus that is like annoying, or waiting for that, or that's going on, or that there's yeah.
You're amazing. Keep going.
This is easy. This is easy. Believe me, we've had so many situations here throughout the years. I've been here. Yeah, we've had every, like, thank God. Yeah, but it's forward, and that's what Joshua was basically saying. It's like, we're going forward with emunah, with belief, with speaking to Hashem, with perseverance, and with that you're gonna be victorious. You're gonna win. It's above nature. And so we've seen this as the Jewish people throughout history. In here, the modern day, right? 1948, 1967, 1970, like it's crazy for us as the Jewish people not to dance all day and to say, wow, Hashem loves us. Hashem loves me. And this is insane how miraculous everything is, right? Golda Meir said, like, to believe in miracles in Israel, you are a realist. Reality is miracles. And that's what Joshua was teaching these people, that sun, right? Like sun with a O and with a U, like sun. Like, listen up over here. Like, you're going to be going into this. You're going to do this. You're going to battle in. But remember that you're above nature. You have the power to do this above nature. And how does this day connect to Gimmel Tammuz, to the third day of Tammuz, the day of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Hilulah, right? Such a powerful day. And nothing is a coincidence that this is the day. That was such a powerful day in history. It was a powerful day by his father-in-law, right? Where basically, again, the sun, it's above the sun because he was in Soviet prison, where, again, nobody comes out of there. Not only if you come out of there, you're missing, like, and he was going to go essentially to exile and live like the rest of his life out there, somewhere far out. But not only that, eventually he was completely released and he was accorded a title of honor. There was a transformation of, like, taking the tzaddik and the presence of being, this is not reality. That these people are not reality. That this negativity which is going on is not the truth. It's just the seeming absence of light. But that's not reality. Reality is goodness. Reality is God's oneness in creation. That firm belief, that belief so deeply ingrained within this individual, the Frierdiker Rebbe, what is something that we receive, whether we know it or not, because, like, we follow on, his generation. And that's very much the energy of Gimmel Tammuz. It's just interesting before we get to the Rebbe, but the whole essence of these next few months, specifically this month, is that it's called the time of the sun. It's like the sun, where the sun is so powerful during this time that there's either idolatry or we use the sun for finding God, because the sun is an analogy for God. It says in Psalms, Shemesh umagen, that there's the sun and then there's the shield. God's name is Yud Kei Vav Kei, tetragrammaton, which is the sun, and Elokim is God's name, or Adnai, which is within nature. So the sun is really a parable almost for godliness being very prevalent, very strong during this month. Although it's a month of potential negativity, it's a month also of positivity. And it's the perception that we take, which very much has to do with the essence of this month, which has to do with perception, with the eyes. Do we look at things for the negative, or do we identify or give? Like, and we do this so quickly, we automatically judge, like without even thinking. Like it's instinctual how like our programming just right away just judges situation. This is bad, this is good, this person is that person is this. Like right away, like we give labels, like automatically. And the month of Tammuz is about the observation. It's taking a breath in and basically I'm choosing to look at things in this way. It's a different perspective. But what if you do try a different perspective? Very often, like we're scared to try another perspective because that's gonna like shake our selves as being like, well, then who am I if I'm now thinking in a different way? Then it's basically like it's questioning our whole self, and questioning our whole self. Thank you. Yes. Took care of business. He's big. Yeah.
So struggling to.
Good. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, questions, like comments. What do you guys think? Any thoughts? Anything come to mind? Like, what do you the power perception of below the sun or above the sun? Am I connected to miracles? Is miracles a reality? Or I'm in a lack mentality that this is going to happen and this is who I am and this is my future. It's idolatry basically, or like infinity or godliness. It's a day which is a very, very powerful day that even causes us to look at a demise, at a passing of such a great leader, and sort of ask the question, well, what does that even, what does death even mean?
So Rabbi, if we're
Yes.
working on something today, can we use the power of this day to help us with our work?
Absolutely. That's what every auspicious day, every powerful day on the calendar, we should use that day in our personal lives and whatever it is we're going, wherever it is we are in. Like if we're able to like open up like the window to that, or like a little bit tune in, even for a split second within the day, into something of that day, then that affects us. That's why in Hebrew the name for a holiday is a chag. Chag means a circle, machog, and it's a circle because there's that energy basically has a circular rotation. And so in this day, there's the energy of what happened all the way back then. So imagine on this day, the sun didn't set, right? Or there was like, the Friedrich Rebbe came out of prison, or the Rebbe, whatever, again, passed. But like, what does that mean? Like on this day, there's something which is very intense and something very, very powerful that we can utilize for for us in our lives, right? And I'd love to hear from you, like what, any ideas about that. But I could share that for myself personally. Like I felt very much connected to, I mean, I don't have to tell anyone, like things are they're pretty intense, pretty crazy in the world. And wherever it is, and during this month, it's a little bit more intense because the month of Tammuz is Cancer, right? That's a very emotional month. Like we're basically in Emotionville. So we're feeling a lot of emotions. So within those emotions, to now have like more presence is a little bit difficult. Yet within this sea, and because it's a water sign, also the month of Tammuz, right? Cancer is a water sign, which is very emotional. So even within the emotions and the craziness, when we realize that we have the ability to open up our eyes, and that means to have the different level of perception, then that's a game changer. And that's basically the last thing pretty much that the Rebbe put out there for the world, that open up your eyes. Like if we have open up your eyes is pretty intense. Like, well, open up your eyes. Like my eyes are open. What are you talking about? What does that mean? Open up your eyes. It means like, what's your perception? What's your perspective? Is the perspective good? Are things like, yes, things are crazy. Things are intense. They always have been, and things will probably, or are you able to be more calm and observe the water or the craziness of it and just observe it, and to view the blessings in the moment, and in life, like to view that. Aleinu l'shabech, I have to give thanks. Thank you, Hashem. Aleinu l'shabech la'adon hakol. Things are crazy. Thank you, Hashem, for that. Like I don't have this is going on in my life. Thank you, Hashem, for that. Like you have all the situations. We could be grumpy about it, and that's our normal default thing, or perception, or the perception, or switch is thank you, Hashem. Try it. Really, like in this situation, say thank you, Hashem. And a lot of times you just almost need like something to remind you. There's a good friend of mine that made these, the Thank You Hashem bands. We're actually working together on a certain non-profit project of really helping people in terms of switching perspective like that. He helped someone that was about to jump off a bridge. This person was about to end their life, and he basically, people got called there, and eventually, I don't know how but they got this girl a band. Thank you, Hashem. She's like, what? Thank you, Hashem. And that was like, thank you, Hashem. And that was like a switch. And she started speaking to this person, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna just from that perspective shift. Aleinu l'shabech. We must give thanks, la'adon hakol, to the master of all. I don't have this in my, this is not going, thank you, Hashem. It's hard. It's not normal almost, but it's, what are we choosing to be? Are we choosing to be anxious or angry or whatever? Or we're choosing to have dibur, medaber. I'm bringing God into my life. Thank you, Hashem. I'm bringing you into my situation. You made the situation. You put me in the situation. I didn't know. How did I get there? I'm not that smart that I could get into any these situations. It's all pre-designed, orchestrated, and I'm in this, and you know that I'm in this. You're waiting for me to acknowledge that you know that I know. So what am I going to do? I could be grumpy and everything like that, or I could be like, I know that you're here, and I thank you for this, for me being here. It doesn't feel good, but I recognize you. Aleinu l'shabech, einod milvado. Nothing exists besides for you. That's the conquest of the land. That's the conquest of our land. That's the conquest of the land. The conquest of the land is not just on a physical level. It's not just when things are good, then we conquer. It's when we conquer when things are hard. That's where you conquer, when things are hard. It's not when it's easy, when it's difficult. And within that, you see the sun. You see the sunshine, like within that. Wow. I saw that. Open up your eyes. It's like seeing the sun within that. Wow, incredible. I was speaking to my wife. She drove me here. We're having a whole discussion on the on this topic pretty much, but on the last discourse of the Rebbe, which was a very powerful discourse where he kind of like speaks about this concept of like, what we need to do in our generation is, and we spoke about like basically there's two ways that a person could become transformed by the challenges. So they feel the challenge, but they still are not connecting the challenge to them, to their lives, to their intellect, to their emotions. It's called Va'ata Tetzave, Veronica. So they're not connecting the emotions or them to what's going on above them, right? Because we always have these situations. We have like the crazy situation. We're like, oh wow, I'm gonna learn from that, but then you don't learn from that because it was just like it didn't integrate. Exactly. It wasn't a situation that integrated. But then there's another situation where after the event, you're like, what did I learn from here? What do I need to take from here? What do I need to integrate into my life? How am I not going to be as reactive as I am? How am I going to try to be this and that? How am I going to actually do this? And I integrate it within myself. So then that becomes an integrated experience of transformation. And in a way, Viktor Frankl was very much inspired by the Rebbe to keep on with his work, because in the Holocaust there were a lot of people that survived, but then they weren't the same. I mean, there were individuals like what's the name of that book? Edith Edgar. She wrote this book. We have her book at home, but she has learned tremendous lessons from such, horrific situations. And so did someone like Viktor Frankl, that was able to recognize that's the difference between people who survive and people that didn't survive. It's the choice. When they were able to make the choice, they didn't necessarily like where they were, but they had the active choice of bringing their mind basically into the situation, whatever to be present to the situation that they were in. On a spiritual level, on a higher level, when you bring God into the situation, this is according to psychology, according to humanistic belief, logotherapy, and when you have the perspective of basically there's a reason for this. Why am I going through this? There's something greater which is about to happen. That's the premise of all of logotherapy. And on a higher spiritual level, and the Rebbe very much saw in logotherapy an essential next step for psychology. Like psychology can't continue to advance with like there's an ego and there's a this and that. We're like in this like mouse trap of mouse, what do you call it? House that is just going around and around. Like we're not solving, we're not really getting to a deeper place without recognizing that we do have choice. We have the power to make executive decisions and to bring God into our lives basically on a higher level. Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand the integration. So Hashem is working through us, and then we have to recognize that and put it into action.
Yes.
Is that
yes? And our action is actually what we call the chiddush. The chiddush is like the novelty of all of existence. Because when we do that, then that's a higher level than even being in the desert. Because being in the desert, we're given all of the intentions. It's all there, but it's sort of easy. But when we're in the land, when we're working the land, and then we do the work there, then that shows that it's a higher level than even being in the desert, because that becomes our choice. And our choice means it's our intention. It's our owning, which makes the satisfaction ours, which is the greatest good, because the satisfaction is the good of the situation. Without the satisfaction, you could have all the greatest food, but not be satisfied by it because you had the same food yesterday and the day before. But when you went and you cooked it, and it's not as good, but you cooked it and it's you, or your little child cooked it, and it's like they're just noodles or something like that, but you enjoy those noodles, right? So much more. Or you enjoy the gift that the little child gave you, even though it's just like, what is it? But it's so precious because they made it, and you love it because they made it. And so too, it's from Hashem's perspective, from God's perspective. It's like we're making that little gift, that effort, but that little effort is the effort, which is the highest level, which is even higher than being in the desert, because it's being in the essence. It's being in Ein Od space, not spiritual space, but that is really Ein Od. That is really what we call Atzmos, the essence. That's the essence is found within everything. And it's not limited to anything. It's not limited to the spiritual. It's not limited to the physical. It's really the essence of the two. And that, my friends, is really, we could say, the Rebbe, like no one else, in the last 100 years, was able to take lofty concepts and like boots on the ground, send emissaries to far-flung places such as Ukraine. My son, God bless him, we're trying to talk him out of it, but he wants to go to the Ukraine for camp to help these refugee kids that are there. My father, his grandfather's like sending him like things that are going on, and everyone is like freaked. He's like, anyways, the jury's still out. Like we're still having a conversation on that, but he feels that call, and he's a young man, and he's like, well, I want to like go and do good and go out there and to really, go to the Ukraine and help these poor kids that have nothing going on in their lives, and they're, and devastation and really sad way for any human to live, and especially a child, to live in a war-torn environment. That's lots of therapy work for entire life, and anyways, the Rebbe really inspired, people like my son, like myself, like others from that have done this kind of work of going to the end of the world, if it's in a physical level or it's a spiritual level. And that's really the marching orders for all of us, to take these two dimensions that seem so paradoxical, so contradictory in a sense, and to merge them. And we have the ability to merge them through the speech of prayer, the speech of Chassidus, of learning, speech of Torah, right? The speech of Emunah, of thank you, Hashem, of gratitude. We have the ability to tap into it. It's the fear, and it's basically the opening up our eyes, which is really geula. That is really redemption. And we're waiting for a certain critical mass that can do this work. It doesn't necessarily have to be everyone, but if there's an idea of 80-20, so there's a certain mass of people, and there are many people that are doing this work, and we're all part of that. And we recognize that we are all a part of this greater force of good, regardless of what the news says, regardless of what everything, all the information which is coming down at us, which again is a blessing if we choose what we want to tune into, versus overwhelmed by so much information, which could give us even more anxiety than even what's really going on, because we have so much information, we don't even know how to process it, right? So it's the choice, and instilling that presence is geula, right? That's the personal redemption for us that we do. So on that note, I think that's Miriam. Any questions, comments? Hi, Miriam.
I was listening to what you're saying. Hi. I have just so many thoughts. I'm trying to see if I can actually kind of put them in something logical. I had the amazing opportunity to live in Crown Heights and to be by the Rebbe for a couple of years, and actually to have received that mimer that the Rebbe gave out from Atat Tzave. So wow. Just as a prelude, that the Rebbe is, for me, such an inspiration for every single day, how I live my life, and it's a point and light of anchor for the rest of my day, learning something in the morning that he teaches on top of doing certain directives that he had taught, like doing Chumash, Tanya, Tehillim. So I saw the Rebbe, and for me, the fact that the Rebbe is very much present is the fact that my kids talk about him, aspire to him, teach his teachings, and they've never met him. But for me, the fact that my kids live the precepts of what the Rebbe teaches goes to show me that everything that he had said to teach us was for our own personal geula, our own personal redemption. And the idea of perception, I was listening today to a Rabbi Gordon, on his talks every day. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi, the word for sorrows, like troubles and suffering, yeah. How do you spell that? Like in the singular, how do you spell that?
Sarah. Sadik Reish.
Okay, so he was Sadik Reish Hey. So if I understood correctly, if you reverse or change the letter, it becomes Zohar. Is that Zohar. Correct? Which is yes. To shed light.
Which is so a window. Yes.
So what I learned from that is that Rabbi Gordon, in his talk today, and again, everything I learned, and I'm hoping that's what the Rebbe has taught us, to take everything as a lesson, that the remedy is there even before, God forbid, lo aleinu, the suffering, which means the same situation could be perceived differently. The light is there, look at it differently, and then it'll reverse, which is what you're saying, to open your eyes and see, which is what the Rebbe said, which means, I think I understood it as a hope or a wish. Open your eyes, and eventually Mashiach would reveal himself and goodness in the world. But it's no, open your eyes, right. Us, and the reality of good is actually there.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I've achieved this, I'm working on is, and I've learned from a couple of people that you spoke, I knew about you from Shifra Chana Hendry. You spoke at one of her summits.
Yeah.
And I learned from her and other people that when something in the real world triggers you, what do? We tend to run away from it. We avoid the pain, but we cause more pain. And I'm learning from that to go through the pain, to allow your emotions to feel and to cleanse. And when you're on the other side, you see the situation differently. And that's your personal guilt. That's your personal redemption. And then when that happens, I don't allude that I have a certain strength or power in this, but when you're aligned with yourself, it seems like things get aligned in the world. Like you see things differently. Sure. Things happen to come up that you were thinking of. Things kind of get aligned. So it's continuous work. It's continuous studying. And I just have to mention about the Rebbe, you know, being Gimmel Tammuz, that I have everything to owe to him as a leader, like Moses, like Moshe Rabbeinu. That is, we're not, God forbid, praying to the Rebbe. He's an intermediary on how we serve Hashem. So I just, for me, I mean, Chassidus is light. It's my oxygen.
That's
And that was personally for me, my own personal revelation to this world that did not make sense before I got introduced to the Rebbe's teaching. So I just want to, you know, kind of
Wow.
support what you're saying,
Wow.
reality, and I'm
Beautiful.
hoping
Thank
people
you.
will realize
Powerful.
that.
That's so powerful. Thank you, Miriam. And I was thinking today, I had like a new kind of revelation on this day, that Gimmel Tammuz is connected to gamma, like gamma waves. So we did whatever, we had like a course on meditation and Kabbalah. And so basically we're comprised of beta waves, beta brain waves, which is our like anxiety, like, you know, or there's different levels of beta. And then there's alpha, and then there's delta, whatever, there's theta, not getting to the details, but gamma waves, they've actually found that that meditators that really meditate a lot, they operate, they have a different frequency, which is called gamma waves. And gamma waves are able to, they're very interesting because they're so subtle that they're the most spiritual, but they're so subtle, they're almost like so present. It's like this connection between these two opposites, because you could be awake and walking and you are within this gamma frequency. Like open up your eyes is basically, we have the ability, if we so want, you know, and work on, right, to meditate, to pray, to daven, to learn, to change our frequency by having a different frequency. So I was thinking, like, Gimmel Tammuz is the third day, but Gimmel is like the idea of gamma, and this day is like this day is a very high revelation of, like, you know, as I was meditating this morning, like I felt this very strong, or not strong, rather subtle, because it's not strong, just very uplifting yet very, very grounding. And something to think about and to take with us into our day-to-day practice, to yearn for not just something which is spiritual or lofty, but how am I going to integrate it into my life? And I liked what you said, Miriam, like when we learn Chitas, which is Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya every single day, and we learn something, of the Rebbe or Chassidus or Kabbalah, what we do is, like, we integrate teachings into our day, that we could be on that gamma wavelength, that even when we're working, or we're in the kitchen, we're cooking, we're with our whatever it is that we're doing, we're also connected, because that's the point, bringing Hashem into the earth, bringing Hashem into my life, like in the washing of the dishes. It's not like two different realities. It's one thing. It's one reality. So
I would say that getting to that level of feeling that, the learning has to take place every day, even if we don't get it, even if it doesn't move us, because eventually it'll penetrate and there'll be a glimmer of, I call it neshama crying, like your soul's getting a cleanse, like a shower, and you feel this magnanimous feeling, and outside of yourself. And so it's a consistent learning, and that's the only way. Otherwise, we go into our own constraints, the constraints of the world. So it's a constant battle, but it's there.
It's a warrior. That's what a warrior is. You're a spiritual warrior. What's a spiritual warrior? You're you're not like, oh, well, this is going to happen to me. Everything's good. Spiritual warriors, like you're working through stuff, you're doing things, you have a practice, you have, an order, you're doing things. So that spiritual warriorship that we're doing. I was going to mention, I think it's a little too late for a meditation, but what's that? Yeah. Should we do a little meditation to end it off? Yeah. Yes. 12:30. Yeah. 12:15. Yeah.
So after a QM, you come here?
Yes.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Okay. So, yeah. Good night. Yeah. So I think, well, maybe we'll pause over here, unless you guys are a short meditation.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think let's save this for next time. But in the meantime, I want to bless us all with a tremendous third day of Tammuz. May we be blessed with in the merit of the Rebbe, the merit of Joshua, the merit of Friedrich Rebbe, all the tzaddikim, with all that we need in the physical and in the spiritual, all for the good, and in a way that can just empower and illuminate every part of our lives and everyone that we interact with, illuminated by our presence, and inspiring others to do the same as well.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Blessings.